Hi, everybody. Welcome. Thanks for being here whenever and wherever you're tuning in from. This is Star Service Live. My name is Alexis, and this is part of a series of videos I'm calling Walking the Path. This video is about sobriety. It's about getting sober, staying sober, and still having a dang good time while doing it. And I'm going to explain all of that, of course. But before we get started, I just want to offer that all of these videos I make as donation-based offerings. I appreciate the donations. There is a link in the About section of the YouTube, and you can also go to my Instagram or my website, and there's all kinds of links to sign up for my mailing list, to access other offerings, classes that I have available, stuff like that, to work with me one-on-one if that's something you feel called to do. You can also see my email there, and you can shoot me questions as they arise for future videos. I may do a follow-up for this one later, so peek around for that in the playlist if you're watching this at a later date. But I appreciate you donating the amount that's listed in the About Me to my Venmo. And if you need an alternative payment source, I'll also shoot you that as well, because that's how I'm able to continue offering this work. So thank you so much for supporting the viability of this work in the world. So as we get started, I invite you to close your eyes if that feels available to you. And we'll just build a classroom space here non-locally together. So take a few breaths and just start to settle into your body and your physical space and time, wherever and whenever that is that you're tuning in. And if at any time anything comes up during this course that feels threatening in some way, you might just return to this space of breathing into the body, reminding the body that in this physical space and time, wherever you are safe. And I would encourage you, if you're not physically safe, if that's not actually true, to take what steps you can to get safe before continuing with the video. And as we breathe in and out and build presence in the body, I invite you to imagine your energy, all of that can contain in your imagination, just kind of magnetize to your breathing. So each breath, you're welcoming a little more of your energy back into your physical space and time. Each exhale, just gently releasing anything that's not yours, that happens to be here, that just doesn't need to be. Just collecting yourself in that way. And then get a little more specific. Focus in on your mind, the space of the center of your skull, the brain, if you want to get super physical. And as you breathe there, imagine you're wakening up and enlivening the wisdom of your mind, bringing it online so that you can engage this class with the full wisdom of your mind. With your next breath, allow the wisdom of the mind to sink down into the space of your heart center, waking up the wisdom of the heart and all that that may contain. And just notice qualitatively what arises when you breathe into these places with the intention of accessing these energies. And with your next breath, draw your awareness even further and let the wisdom of your mind and your heart drop down with a big plop into your belly, the bowl of your pelvis, the space between your hips, kind of a little below your belly button. And as you breathe there, let your mind and your heart's wisdom come into balance and relationship with the wisdom of the body which knows how to grow here in form, the body which really grew itself almost out of nothing, out of resources given by the earth. And as you allow these energies to now mix and mingle, Take a moment to choose to be grounded, even more than just in your own physical body. So allow that your energy knows how to ground and just give it the intention to plunge now out of your body into the earth below you, allowing the energy of your body and its own innate wisdom to show you what grounding looks like in this day relative to the needs of this class that we'll undertake together here for the next couple of hours. Allow that energy to snake down, following gravity's wisdom itself as it goes through anything that may have been touched by a human or put there by a human. And plug into the more terrestrial, the more earthy, the pre and post human qualities of the earth below you. As you let that root system fan out and plunge deeply into the dark, still, quiet places, the cool and damp and fertile places in the Earth's energy system, and the Earth's physical body below us. Just take a moment to receive that sense of grounding that you've now cultivated just by your choice to try this exercise out. You may notice you want to rock back and forth a little bit, side to side. Really let your physical body experience the grounding. You might even stand up, move around, lie down, do whatever you need to do with your body to really feel into this new quality of grounding. And then just take a few breaths that really welcome that earth energy up into your body. Let it rise up and fan into your physical body. Let it inform the wisdom of your body and heart and mind. And let it really solidify your choice to be here now in a space that is for learning and exploration, for experiencing ideas, whether they're old or new, trying them on, seeing what works, moving on from what doesn't. And with those energies resourcing us from below, I call out to the helping spirits to please be here with us. I call out to the ancestors, to those who lived and died well, who met the challenges of their times and were able to stay embodied with them, to be with the trouble and to flow forward through their lives in a way that probably wasn't perfect, probably was quite messy, but still maintained that essential integrity and was able to be reconciled at the end of their lives. You who were able to return to us as truly reconciled ancestral helping spirits, I call you in and I ask you to be here now and support us in listening and speaking, in sharing in this energetic space, even though I'm the only one talking, and grappling with what it means to be sober, to get sober, to really approach our lives from a sober place. Help us to grapple with what is unique to us and what must be grappled with that is unique to humanity alone, and to do so in a good way. I call out to each of our helping spirits in all the many forms and faces they take, any who may attend this class at any time or may tune in at a later time from anywhere in the world. I ask your helping spirits to support you and to support us in doing this work together so that all that happens within this circle may transform us, may make us better adaptable to the time and the places in which we live. And I call out to the spirits of the land and the great spirits of the lands where each of us reside, to the helping spirits that are intrinsic to those places and to the ancestral helping spirits that are native to those places. I offer my love and my gratitude, and I call you into this circle. I ask you to resource us and do that thing that you do so well, which is just being the ecosystem that's already around us. Help us to really feel that there is an ecosystem in which we are embedded so that we can feel the impact of our actions and use that impact to make better choices for all of life. And as we gather these energies in our own little bubbles of support and protection and blessing, I invite you to imagine that our circle is a circle, that our call is a circle that you step into, like if you were stepping up to a campfire. And into this circle, I call out to the elemental energies to help us hold this space, to earth and air and fire, particularly, and water, so that we may flow with your essences a little more online. And as these energies fill and animate this space for us, I invite you to signal to your energy that you step into a sacred space. And if it feels good, you can even physically stand up and step over the threshold to join us. And just feel how it feels to now move into this space. Make sure you have your boundaries online so you feel pretty good and grounded in who you are, distinct from others. And also notice that there's a lot of space. Please help me to make this space open for anyone who may participate in any way that is not harmful to themselves or others. And as we gather here together, I give deep honoring and gratitude to all these energies that have informed this work and that now inform it in this moment. May what needs to be said be said. May what needs to be heard be heard. And may these proceedings go forth in a way that is good and true and beautiful for all life and truly aligns us a little more with the dream of the earth. When you feel ready, you can open your eyes, make the choice to shift back out into more of like a classroom space. So, sobriety, what is it? First off, the short answer is that it's whatever you make it. And so I don't want to position myself as someone who gets to define what sobriety is for you. And I think part of the problem that we encounter in sort of recovery world generally or in sobriety world generally is that there's a lot of gatekeeping, whether that's very explicit or very implicit and kind of subtle and below ground. But so your sobriety is your own. And this is first key concept here that I want to share. And I think it's really important because nobody else gets to define what sobriety is for you. And there's nothing wrong with how you choose that. Or maybe to put it more carefully, there may be wrong things with what you choose. If you're saying, well, I'm gonna like stop drinking, but I'm going to take acid every single day. There may be something wrong with that. You know what I mean? But I can't define that for you. Nothing against taking acid every day. It's just, sounds kind of wild. But the idea is that you have to be the final arbiter of what works and what doesn't work. And community and support are really important, teachers, mentors, etc. And there's nothing wrong with even like the most flawed sobriety community or recovery community. If it works for what you need it to work for, there's nothing wrong with that. Kind of goes along with sobriety is your own. So your recovery is also your own, all of that. How you language this stuff, how you engage it, it's all you. And it's important to ask for help. We'll talk about that later. But you have to be the final arbiter of what works because this is really about your choices and you making choices that really either reflect on the life that you're creating, that you really want to be creating, the impact you're leaving, the legacy you're weaving, or don't. So that's one really key concept before we go further. Your sobriety is your own. So if that's Cali sober, quote unquote, I need to get my water. If that's I'm sober Monday through Friday, if that's, I'm not here to tell you what's going to work for you. I just can't. I don't have that power. So, and at different times and different spaces in my life, different things have worked for me. And so that's just an important truth about reality. You know what I mean? Same with food, same with everything, same with exercise. So yeah, that's key concept number one. Key concept number two, though, is that everything happens in the body. What you put in it, what you do with your body, how you experience your body, how you talk to your body, how kind you are to your body or not kind. And again, kindness looks different for all people, all different bodies. So this really is about you and your body. So if our understanding of sobriety is chiefly or strictly psychological, then we may be missing something pretty key. If it is physical or medicalized in a way that still seems to be kind of disembodied. So we're only talking about chemicals and their effects on the endocrine system and that kind of thing. Then we also may be missing something key. The idea is that your sobriety is about your embodiment as a living organism. That is a very complex and multidimensional thing, but it does have to root back into the physical reality that what I put in my body has an effect on my life. Um, and that's a really hard pill to swallow. Literally, sometimes, metaphorically, for sure. For me, often I struggle a lot with food. And so I often struggle with this, well, I can eat this because then I'll take this herb and I'll feel okay and I won't have a symptom reaction to it. That kind of haggling that we all have to do because this is an imperfect world and our bodies are not meant to be these like perfect Neolithic things that just eat pure food. You know what I mean? Like people in whatever imagined paradise we can imagine got sick, felt like crap, had diarrhea, had weird food allergies, like all that stuff. It's like we really want to go back to the promised land sometimes in like paleo culture, but it's like there really is no promised land to go back to. So bodies are uncomfortable, bodies are a mess, but everything on the path to sobriety, recovery, and more largely just health, it happens in the body. Seems really obvious, but as we'll see, it's not always as obvious as it could be. And we live in a really disembodied culture at a really disembodied time. So it's constantly like we need to constantly underline that for ourselves. Oh, this is about my body. This isn't about morality necessarily. It's not even necessarily about ethics. Definitely not about like God necessarily or anything like that. It's about my body. You can make the argument that God is your body is God for sure, but yeah. So the third key component of my experience of sobriety is that we all need help and support, and it's just something to embrace. It's not going to look the same for everyone, going back to number one. And two, considering the fact that it does all root in your body's going to need different support. Oftentimes, that help for me has been physical in terms of body work, in terms of massage, acupuncture, support, spiritual healing, shamanic healing. Anyone who listens to me and in any context knows that that's kind of what I'm about. All of that stuff. So, support and help can look really different at really different times, and oftentimes, different steps of recovery require different things. And so, sometimes we get over this and we do embrace the fact that we do need support, but then we get stuck and we always look to the same person or group for support. And sometimes that's actually a way to stick yourself at one phase of your process and not move further. And so the idea is that we definitely always need help and support in some way, and there are times when it really feels pretty solitary, sobriety. At times when it feels, you know what, all my friends are out and I really just can't take it right now. And I really just have to be in my room alone for several nights on end. And it sucks. But there's a support, there needs to be a support in some way, and the support for me at those kind of really solitary times were body workers, were teachers, were, peers that were doing the same thing in some way. So there's always a support. It's not going to always literally be every single second I have my sponsor on speed dial and I'm texting them constantly. That can sometimes veer into codependency. But just the understanding that we're not here to do anything alone, period. So again, there are things that are your responsibility. There are moments of really important and key solitude that are so necessary. If you can only do things with groups of people only, if you can only do things with hand holding, your recovery will likely shift you into the other position where you really have to be like, oh shit, this is my time to do this thing alone. I'm at the grocery store by myself and that's on sale and I really shouldn't eat that right now or take that or whatever. You know what I mean? So there's both and it's kind of sits in a continuum, but we can't do one without the other. We can't access support without that system of support within ourselves. We can't access that often without the support outside. And this is all my experience. This is all couched in my experience as someone who's navigated many different ways of being sober, of understanding sobriety. And so, remember, this is all just me talking from my experience. And so continue to open to what works for you and interpret it in the way that works for you too as it moves into action. So I'm going to talk about the three main topics then. So those are my three little key sidebars. The your sobriety is your own, everything roots into the body, and we all need help. Um, and then we'll move into these three main headers and we'll pause periodically to do some kind of drop-ins, let things resonate, and then we'll do an exercise at the end and see where that puts us. So getting sober. So much baggage around this culturally, of course. just so much baggage around everything culturally. So whatever. We don't need to put sobriety on the spot for that. So my key takeaway for how to get sober, and this is something that I've seen both observationally in people that I know and love, and some people that I don't like that much, but still was like, wow, you got sober. Great, good for you. But particularly in my own experience, was we have to have a reason to do it that really animates us. We have to have a vision for our life in some form that we are trying to pursue, or else sobriety doesn't work. So if someone basically comes up to me on the street and I'm shit-faced drunk and they say, you're a bad person because you're shit-faced drunk. You just punched that person. You just crashed your car. You're getting arrested. Da 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 da. You can say all the things you want to make me feel like a bad person. But if I don't want to get sober, if I don't feel a reason to get sober, which is essentially a reason to live, I'm not going to do it. And I remember moments when I was drinking heavily in my teens and 20s where people did confront me with my behavior. And I just said, fuck you. You know what I mean? I just said, whatever, get out of my face. And it wasn't because they were guilt tripping necessarily. It wasn't because they were judgmental. Some of them were, some of them weren't. It's because as I looked forward, I didn't really have a reason to live beyond partying. Partying was like the key thing for me. I just couldn't quite see beyond that. Now, how did that change? Is that, well, luckily for me, my creative impulse has always been there, and it was there before I started drinking, and it dogged me for the whole time that I was drinking, where I would have my soberish nights, or not even sober nights, drunk nights, drawing or writing or doing something, and I would just feel this nagging kind of itch of like, I really want to be making things. I really want to be making things and showing them to people. I really want to be performing. I really wanted to do all of these things. I really wanted to be singing, making music, contributing in some way. And so that itch, I scratched enough. And I walked with that itch through the fires of my addictions. I took that itch to the bar with me. I became a full-time drag queen. I was sharing my art 24/7. You know what I mean? Like sometimes 5 nights a week. And I was just doing it completely shit-faced drunk. But I had that thing that I was pursuing. Now it was really fucking hard to be that hungover and going from show to show to show and practicing and learning lip syncs, trying to teach myself how to do makeup, walk on heels, figuring out outfits, keeping track of my bookings, all of that. That it was really hard. And so my final realization towards getting sober came after I had realized, I want to make an album, I want to be a musician, all of this stuff. And I had done this show, and I had stayed relatively sober during the week of preparing for this show. And I only had one drink the night of the show, but I just bombed, which just that just happens no matter whether you have issues with addiction or not. As an artist, you just bomb sometimes, and you just have to kind of, or as in anything, you just bomb sometimes. That's something I've learned. It wasn't just like, God, it was all the alcohol and if only blah 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 Judy Garland drama. No, I just bombed. You know what I mean? I was as prepared as I could have been at that point. But on the plane home, I was thinking about the people I had been staying with and how they were sober for many years. And I was like, and they were artists I really respected. And I was like, okay, I think I have to take the risk that the music is as important as anything else. It's the thing that keeps me up at night. It's the thing that has driven my life for the past several years. This was, 10 years ago. So what if the alcohol is in the way? Forget the depression, forget the suicidal tendencies that I woke up with daily because of the alcohol, forget the toxicity in the body and all of that stuff. What if the music is the thing? What if it's that important? And so I took that risk and I took a week off, which turned into a month off, which turned into 10 years off of alcohol, and I moved on. Um, But the thing that sparked that was I had a reason to do it. The reason to do it was music for me. The reason to do it was art, was expression, was this thing that kept me up. And now I think I have to stop the recording and stitch this together. Sorry, hold on. Now, that's not to say that your reason has to be particularly creative or lofty or anything. It's just that you have to have a reason. So the reason could be I see the harm that I'm doing and I want to stop. That's a really good reason. The reason could be I just feel like shit all the time and I don't want to feel like shit anymore. Totally valid reason. The reason could be like similar to mine. I'm trying to do this thing and it's just not working because I'm just fucking drunk all the time. There's a lot of ways in which the reason can look really differently, and that's totally all valid. Your reason won't necessarily stay the same for your life. You don't have to find your life's purpose before you can let it animate you and pull you through a recovery process. It can be really simple. It can be as blunt as I just feel like crap. And it can be as blunt as, well, the doctor told me I'm gonna die. You know, if I keep drinking, I'm gonna die. And for me, I felt similarly. There was a lot of suicidal ideation that came in and depression that came in with my alcoholism. And so it was my alcohol abuse. And so, I felt the mortality. I definitely felt like, if I don't stop, I don't know that I won't jump in front of this train because I would wait for the subway a lot and think about it a lot. And so it's only by the grace of God that I didn't take that choice, and nothing against anyone who has. But you do have to have a reason. So it could be as simple as just sitting in I'm here, I'm questioning this already. What is my reason? What is the thing that pulls me forward? What is the thing that says risk doing things differently? What is the thing that says, I want more space in your life and I can't currently exist? Whether it's health, art, success, money, because fucking addictions are expensive. you know, um, Family, relationships, love, whatever it is that your addictions are holding you from, let those be the things that actually pull you through. Come into relationship with those things. That's my first piece of advice. So if you want to follow along, let's take a little exercise break. So, coming out of the mental space of thinking about this, because it's already been a lot of talking, let's come back into that energetic space of the classroom circle where we're supported by the earth, we're supported by the elements, by the helping spirits, by the land, the ecosystem, by our ancestral helping spirits, particularly those that know what it is to struggle with the reason for which they're alive. And just imagine as you're sitting here, as you sink back into the energy of your body, that you have a little candle flame flickering in that space of your pelvis. And as you touch into that flame, which is your life force, you might actually find that it's more than a candle. It might be a raging bonfire. Might actually show you that it's out in some way. So just take a moment to sit with that energy and see what's there. But I would imagine, and I would encourage you to imagine that if you're alive, there's at least a spark. This is the thing that keeps you alive. So as you settle into that space in your pelvis, take a moment to let that flame show you what it is. What's been fueling it? What is its reason? What is the vision that this flame is animating you towards? Open to all the ways that this could communicate itself to you through emotions or thoughts, through words or images or textures or tastes or memories, songs, sounds. Open to the multidimensional quality that this flame might have to communicate with you. What is the reason for which you can find your sobriety? There may be several. And again, there may be something as simple as I need to feel more healthy. I need to feel better. Could be relational. Need to show up for a particular relationship differently. It could be a goal or a practice or a path you've been attempting to walk, or you've wanted to walk and you haven't been able to even take the first step on. So just take a moment to really come into that relationship here in the space of body awareness, supported by the earth, surrounded by all your spirit help, even if you don't know that you have it, even if you've never even heard of spirit help before. And continue to open to all the ways that that flame can show you what's been fueling it this whole time. What's been keeping it alive? Stay open to being surprised by this. If you feel like you want more time with this, feel free to pause the recording here. Take as much time as you need. But don't feel like you need to chart the whole path, figure it all out right now. Let your mind and your heart and your body all just come into relationship with this energy. Just enough that tomorrow or the next day or next week or month, if you choose to, you can drop back into this relationship. And we'll prepare to shift gears, so thank your flame of your life force. Thank your body for holding that, for continuing to be alive. And maybe just maintain that sense of your flame as it's flickering or raging, however it is, as we shift back into listening mode to talk about our next point. So, staying sober is often the harder part for a lot of us because some of us can be really good at those big, dramatic, radical changes. And then Monday and Tuesday and Wednesday and Thursday and Friday happen, right? Some of us from that rock bottom place can find and see, we may encounter the flame. We may really feel the reason why we need to be sober. And we may get sober. We may stay sober for a period of months or even years. And then something yanks us back in, whether it's the same substance or a different substance. So let's talk about my understanding of substance, sobriety, drugs, etc. a little more so that we can be on the same page. I'll just define the terms as I'm using them, which is probably pretty different. I'm not an expert, right? I didn't study this stuff in school. I just lived it. So just been working on definitions that work for me. So what is a drug? For me, a drug is a behavior which stems from an unmet need but does not actually meet that need. So I may also use the term interchangeably with an addiction. So an addiction is a behavior which stems from an unmet need but does not actually meet that need. So this assumes that all of our addictive and potentially any of our destructive behaviors are stemming from an unmet need in some form. And most of them are not meeting that need. So for me, one of the needs that alcohol really fed for me for a time was for release, for freedom, for a sense of escape from a culture and a society that felt really restrictive. Because I'm like a queer, non-binary person that grew up in the Midwest, in the 90s. So there was a lot of things that felt really restrictive, and I'm a double Aquarius. So there's a lot of things that felt really restrictive about my environment. And then on the other hand, alcohol fed my needs for control because I was consuming. I was, in some way, it was agency. I was choosing to consume these drinks. I felt really adult. I felt really grown up. I felt really in charge of my destiny. Even though alcohol fed this chaotic lack of control, I was so meticulous as an addict, right? Like I always knew what I was doing. I never showed up to a party without beer or wine or whatever. I never showed up to an environment where I didn't know I could get a drink. Like I was so on it. And many of us as addicts, particularly when our addictions have these visible substance patterns like alcohol, drugs, etc. Um, drugs in the sense of like, controlled substances, they're all really controlling, even though it seems really out of control because we're getting the same experience essentially over and over. It's like this is why it gets so boring, and is ultimately really unsatisfying because it really doesn't meet the need, and it may not even address the fact that there's a need there at all. Sex addiction was the same for me. It was like always getting the same sort of experience. It was always so uniquely unsatisfying, but I felt in control in some way. But it was really hard for me to see that. It took some time. So assume that the behaviors which we would consider addictive are all rooted in an unmet need, which is for most of us rooted in childhood. You know, most of us rooted in some way in which our needs were not met. And we don't have to psychologize about that because some of these are very emotional, intuitive, some of them are very psychic, spiritual, physical, political, you know what I mean? Social. There's all kinds of different spectrums of need. But that's just an assumption that I'm making about addictive behaviors. I don't really buy into the fact that we're all genetically predisposed or not predisposed to certain things. I do experience ancestral components of everything, and maybe we'll loop back to that at the end. I'm going to write myself a little note because that's one place that we definitely need to have some specialized help. But I don't just think it's a chemical thing. I just don't. It just doesn't work for me. You know what I mean? Like I don't just think that I was like chemically bipolar or schizoaffective or whatever I was, or BPD, whatever you might have called that when I was expressing symptoms that looked like that. Because I don't think that the world is like this mechanized thing that can be reduced to molecules and atoms. Because that really robs and cheapens the world of mystery for me. And it doesn't work. For me, the mechanized solutions, we would all just take these pills that make you not crave alcohol. It just doesn't work that way. I wish. And that sounds like another drug to me. So there you go. So for me, it's not the substance. And it's definitely not the substance as it relates to the culture. It's the behavior, its intention, its root drive, and its effects. Like, is it actually doing what I want it to be doing? Because intoxication exists in pretty much every culture to have ever existed, as far as I know, anthropologically, historically, just my gut says yes. Intoxication in and of itself is not bad or wrong or addictive necessarily. There are beautiful examples in indigenous cultures, for example, that had traditions where, whether it was through dance or imbibing a certain substance, where people were very altered, very intoxicated in some way. Sometimes there were crazy feast days and wild revelry things, and everyone would switch genders and have sex with people they wouldn't normally have sex with, and blah 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 blah. Incredibly intoxicating, but it didn't derail their lives or their culture. So it's definitely not the behavior as it relates to like a Christian or Judeo-Christian or Victorian moral framework or anything like that. But it's not necessarily the behavior itself. Because some people can have a few drinks, literally. And I will say this and just like risk canceling for it. Some people can get drunk, even maybe frequently, and it may not derail their lives. I can't. You know what I mean? That doesn't make me genetically fucked up. It doesn't make me genetically an addict or just this irredeemable alcoholic. You know what I mean? It just is a measure of the uniqueness of being a human. Um, the reason I know this most is because my addictions, initially, I addressed them purely as substances. I removed alcohol 10 years ago successfully, and I'm very stubborn. And I certainly had chemical dependencies, and I went through a whole detox period. And I had to physically address the detox through yoga and all of this stuff. And it was rough. It was a really hellish year, gotta be honest. But once I removed the alcohol, it really shifted a lot of things, but the core patterns remained. Because then I found the same behaviors expressing themselves through marijuana. And marijuana was the thing that helped me off of alcohol. It was really important for me. For a while, it was very medicinal. And then it became a drug. And then it became a very destructive drug. And then I found myself waking up suicidal again. And I was like, Twilight Zone, I've been here before. What the fuck? Marijuana, you're not supposed to do this kind of thing. And there's more. Maybe we'll do a follow-up video where we talk more about the process of getting sober and that kind of stuff and what that looked like for me. But so I removed marijuana almost 5 years ago. And I find that the same patterns are still at play. And that doesn't mean that I haven't done my work, because I've done some really heavy duty, very effective and skilled transformational work with a lot of good support. It's just that I'm scraping deeper and deeper layers into these patterns, going back into ancestral echoes of the pattern, roots of the pattern, etc. But I find that this addiction now expresses in busyness, in my inability to stop working. And that's really different than how my life looked 15-ish years ago, like the last time I lived in Kansas City. Um, because I worked, I had a job and stuff. I paid my bills and my rent, but for the most part, my job was party. So it's different, but at the same time, it's not that different. It was just this thing, this movement that never quite touched this wounding, emptiness, hurt, pain, all the things that are there in those unmet needs, and the things that those unmet needs leave in us, in our bodies, in our energy, in our emotions. So it's not the substance, it's not the behavior, it's the effects, the intentions, and whether it's rooted in an unmet need or not. So, the trick to staying sober is to address that wholeheartedly. Own that as part of a process, the recovery process, and get yourself a set of tools that allow you to trace these behaviors and every behavior back to the roots so that you can reclaim your agency and actually do things you want to be doing instead of just being driven by the unmet needs of your childhood or of your early life, whether it was childhood or not, or whether it was yesterday. You know what I mean? Whatever it is, it's you. We all need a clearing tool in order to trace our behaviors back to their roots. Because the cool thing about tools like this that are truly effective, what we call clearing tools in my community, is that they are diagnostic. So you may look at a behavior and be like, that seems really addictive, and drop in and work with it and be like, oh, that was actually me just expressing joy. It seemed addictive because it was so intoxicating. And it seemed kind of scary because I actually lost a little bit of control in that moment. And everyone around me looked at me really weird, but that was just authentic joy. Good to know, you know? But then there may be a way in which something that seems really successful, really, really socially functional, really, really gets you a lot of accolades. You take that as a pattern into your clearing process, trace it to where it's rooted in the body, and realize that it's being driven by a really, really, really unmet need from childhood. A wounded child, you might say. So, or anything, any marginalized inner self. So that is the thing that is often missing from recovery processes that I see is that we get really good at managing the behaviors like CBT or whatever, that cognitive behavior therapy. We get really good at sort of deprogramming, reprogramming as if we're these computer programs away from addictive behaviors, whether those are defined by us or the culture or the church or the therapist or whatever. We get really good at programming ourselves away from triggers, things that upset us, so that we go to our main coping mechanism, like our food or our sex or whatever, our drug or our busyness. We get really good at numbing ourselves, and we get really good at tailoring our life as if we're walking through a minefield, um, and tiptoeing around and avoiding the things, avoiding those people that challenge us, avoiding those situations that challenge us, putting trigger warnings around everything. We get really, really good. Oftentimes we do the opposite too. We use this constant sort of state of intensity. I'm watching violent movies. I'm watching, you know what I mean? Like really intense sports events. I'm like going to really loud bars and I'm having really loud conversations with my friends and I'm on the phone really late and I avoid the quiet where I feel those unmet needs kind of calling for my attention by constantly triggering with this kind of like constant sensory assault, etc. All of these are ways in which we cope. Those aren't ways in which we necessarily recover. So the recovery needs, as part of it, a step where you actually learn how to go in and address at the root, at the physical root, with clarity, not just like Kundalini yogaing it out of existence or like taking so much ayahuasca that it just somehow processes itself through, but actually with clarity so that in the moment I can recognize that I'm either am or am not in an addictive behavior or destructive behavior or whatever behavior, in any inauthentic behavior. Choose to step out, choose to track back to the earliest time, choose to meet through the reparenting process, which this is not complicated stuff. It's actually really simple once you learn an effective clearing tool. Choose to meet the unmet needs of the marginalized self within me that is driving that pattern, and then integrate them and move on with my life. So that is a really key thing that seems to be missing from most recovery processes. And so that's what I would advocate for the most in terms of, if you take anything from this video, in terms of finding a recovery process, I will give some resources at the end. Finding a clearing tool is what I meant to say. So I'll give some resources at the end, and those are of course available on my website as well. And you can always email me if you're having trouble. Pretty much every tradition has one. A lot of them don't hold them intact. But I think a lot of the traditions right now, as the somatic therapies are intersecting with the spiritual traditions, with the really good people who are doing really cool innovation within their spiritual traditions and updating them for the new world that we're in that is sorely needs them to be responsive and not just stuck in the tradition. There's a lot of cool work happening in all these spaces of people learning how to do just this very thing. It can look a lot of different ways, but the effect that we're looking for is, did I come into relationship with the unmet need at the root of this behavior or choice or pattern or trigger, overreaction, underreaction, whatever? And did I actually meet that need in a way that I integrated it and resolved it so that I could put that energy forward in a new way? Hopefully, putting that energy forward in service of the first thing, the reason why you're sober in the first place. So that's the key for me to staying sober. That's one key. That's my key little piece for this section. So I'll pause here. We'll take a little moment for an exercise to work with that. So we'll do an exercise to come into relationship with the interior in a way that we can eventually cultivate this style of presence with ourselves and any unmet or marginalized energies that we find. So take a moment to breathe back into body awareness. Again, draw your energy back into your head, your mind. And with your next breath, drop that energy back down into your heart center, your chest. And with your next breath, come back into relationship with your flame in the center of your pelvis, your body's wisdom, the spark of life. And then from there, allow that spark to show you itself as a plant, as an energy that can show you the current state of your grounding. All talk through as if we're all working with a lily, but you may find that it has a different plant quality or shape or nature. You may find you're not super clear on what it is, and that's totally okay. But allow the spark of life in the center of your pelvis to really reveal itself to you as the plant that can teach you how to ground, how to cultivate true presence in order to come into relationship with yourself and to take the steps that you need out in your life in order to find the teachers, the practices, the tools you need to cultivate this relationship with your interior, with the roots of your behavior, with the roots of your being. And as you allow that plant to show itself to you, just kind of notice its quality, feel into its texture, maybe its taste. It's yours, it's your life force, so you can touch it, you can do whatever you want to it. And then allow it to show you its roots. Imagine your consciousness flowing down as if you were the root system itself, and allow it to trace that path, similar to what we did at the very beginning of class, plunging down as an extension of your body into the earth, moving through the many layers that may be basement or lower floors of a building. Maybe there are subways or pipes or sewers, moving through them until you touch something that is pre-human, post-human, that is earth, that is soil, rock, mineral. Follow that root system. Notice its quality. Notice its confidence. Notice its cohesion, its willingness to just be present and physical, material. And as you follow it, let it be sort of magnetized towards the bedrock of the land on which you live, the land of which you are a part. That old dense layer of mineral that kind of sits between the lower tiers of the crust and the looser upper tier on which we live. And with the magic of a plant, allow your root to plug into the bedrock. Really establish that root system. And start to receive its gift. What quality of presence does it have in order to support you in this day? What quality of presence can you guide up through your root into your body as an act of building what you need in terms of your foundation so that you can now take the next step? Not right now, you don't have to know what that step is, but you can eventually take that next step towards presence with your interior, towards cultivating presence with where you may have unmet needs, where the behaviors that you seek to change are rooted. We don't have to go to those behaviors right now or yet. Just think about welcoming in with each breath as if you were just breathing in cool, crystal, potent earth energy, the quality of presence you need to even approach this step or this idea. It might be really earthy, like soil, really rich and black or brown. Might be something really particular to your environment, like sandstone or limestone. Might be something that makes no sense to anyone but you, like a color or a texture or a quality that you could describe with words that no one else might experience from the earth. Just welcome that into your body. Know that this is a relationship you can return to and tend. If you feel like you want more time with this exercise, you can pause the recording now. But remember, we're not necessarily looking for anything other than a quality of support, quality of rootedness and foundation and resilience that allows us to build more presence, more capacity, more connection. When you feel ready, thank the bedrock, thank the earth. Start to flow back up on that geyser of groundedness. Remember, it's going to stay with you. It's not something that's going to just disappear. You've built it in through your practice. Like a hearty meal, you've digested it and you'll continue to metabolize it. And shift back up into the belly, the heart, the head. Shift back out into more of a classroom style awareness. Notice how that plant stays with you throughout the rest of the day. Notice that it's something you can come back to, learn from, grow with. Good work. So the last part, the fun part, hopefully, and I think it's key for staying sober. I also think it's key for getting sober. Because like if you're not enjoying your life in some way, if there's not something, that glimmer of hope, that song that you love, um, that food that you love, you know what I mean? Those things. Even in the midst of sex addiction, when I was having all this meaningless, really dissatisfying sex, there was still those glimmers of pleasure, those moments or those people where I would randomly be like, these are usually the people I would not call back, but the people that I'd be like, oh, I actually feel safe with you in this moment. Weird. So there's always going to be something, right? We just sometimes have to get pretty creative in finding, but find that glimmer of hope and fun, fan it like a flame, root it into the earth. And then we have to look for how we can really maintain our center and our boundaries as we are now, sober and staying sober, so that we can maintain relationships with people who may not be. Because a lot of the fun stuff in the world, people are going to be on their own groove. And that may be as intimate as your intimate relationships, your partner. For example, my partner's not sober. And he's like my favorite person in the world to be around. My family, friends, community. I love going to drag shows. It's really hard to find a drag show where there's not alcohol being served. And at this point, I don't give a shit. You know what I mean? So, how did I get there? How have I been able to have fun? The reason I say this is because I see this step derail a lot of people, where we think that sobriety now means we have to be monks, basically. We have to be super self serious, super grave, we have to never go out. We have to always go to bed at 7 p.m. We have to da 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 da. We have to become these sort of like soulless robots. And we may be really ensouled doing our work, right? We may be tending our reason. We may be doing really good process work internally to address and integrate the roots of unmet needs, all this stuff. But we still may have lost that joy. There was a poem, I wish I could remember it. Um, It's that famous lesbian poet who's kind of intense and polarizing. Anyway, she talked about how the sober years were just sort of like these dry, tasteless years, where it's like the alcohol years or the crazy party years just had so much color and life and da 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 da, and then the sober years just were dry. And I would like to really push back so hard against that. My life has been completely bananas since I got fully, let's say this, fully sober for me, since I let go of marijuana. And I no longer take substances that inebriate me, except for the occasional decaf coffee, which whacks me out, or sugar. But sobriety can be fun, and I would say it should be fun. Now, the quality is often different, and I think it's really important to own something that's very true, which is that what was fun for me 10 years ago is not necessarily fun for me now, nor should it be. And I don't think we should all sit around in this permanent state of adolescence thinking that we should all just be like teenagers all the time. That's disgusting. I don't want to be a teenager. My teen years were a nightmare. Some things were really fun because I could only just laugh at it because it was so fucking scary. Because you know what I mean? Some things were just so ridiculous. All I could do was just try to have fun as best as I could, right? Sometimes the insanity and ecstasy, because I was actually part of a really straight edge friend group before I started drinking when I was 18. Some of that was great. Some of it was coping mechanisms. You know what I mean? So, like, I don't necessarily want to be a teenager. I don't want to be a 20 something. I don't want to be a 30 something for the rest of my life. I want to be who I am and the age that I am. There are different qualities of fun. There are different qualities of joy and pleasure and enjoyment. And we have to open to that reality, or else we're not growing, which really goes back to the am I meeting the unmet needs, or am I leaving those unmet needs intact so that the projections of my childhood constantly fixate on things they attach, it's like the child is attached to a certain quality of fun we never get to grow out of. The child is attached to a certain friend group, bar, whatever. You know what I mean? We get in these little comfort zones. And that's not to say that also mature, growing, transforming people won't have consistency as well. Because drag, that ain't going away in my life. I love drag. You know what I mean? I love it. I love it. I love it. I don't go to drag shows 5 nights a week. I could not. I go to drag shows maybe like once a month. But it's so fun and it feeds me. You know what I mean? And I love it, even bad drag. I don't think any drag is really bad. It's all bad. So that's just me. Um, but our engagement with these things should shift, should mature. And there's no schedule for that. No one gets to show you this is what happens. I think elders are really important, going back to the asking for help and support piece, because they show us possibilities, but they don't necessarily show us the rules. There's no rule about your 60s any more than there's a rule about your 20s. Um, all Aquarians don't do one thing when they're 25, It's just we're all just really, really unique. And isn't that so annoying, right? Don't we It's like we wish so bad that our individuality would be respected. And yet in this culture, we also constantly look for the rule book. Is this normal? Is this what my friends are doing? Is this what my peers are doing? Who cares? Does it feel good? Do you have presence with it? So you have to find ways to have fun. You have to let those grow and evolve. But the idea that a sober life is boring, the idea that a sober life means I can't be around, this is the key piece for me. People who are making different choices than I can, that's where we start to get very religious. We start to become monastic. We start to curate our friend group around the lack of an addiction in the same way that we curated our friend groups and our addiction days around a drug. Like I had my booze friends, right? I lost a lot of friends when I quit drinking. What I realized is that some of those weren't true friendships. It doesn't matter. It's nothing against those people. It's nothing against me at that time. It just was what it was. Those were as good of friendships as I could maintain, blacked out 5 nights a week. Once I stopped doing that, the quality of friendships shifted. Some of them survived, some of them were deeply enriched, some of them had to go. That's just a mature, normal human thing. We change, we grow, etc. When I quit smoking weed, I realized that the weed is such a beautiful, powerful connector. But I didn't really need to be sitting in such a bizarre, I shouldn't put a pejorative on it, on such an intense immersive level of somatic ceremony with some of the people that I was getting stoned with. Because a lot of those people I just met on the bus, on the street, you know what I mean? And that's so beautiful, right? I really value that period in my life. It just was no longer sustainable for me post a certain age. Um, Argument to be made that it was never sustainable at all. So the thing is, it's okay. But I need to, in my work and just in my human life in the United States of America, in Kansas City, Kansas, need to be able to interact with people that are doing all kinds of different things. Now, there's a lot to be said for when you're really purposeful, you're really connected to your reason, you're really in your process work. It's not likely that you're going to be like, going to the trap house. You know what I mean? Unless you literally have a job that is, you sort of intervening in the lives of addicts or something like that. It's not likely that you're going to be around people shooting up or something like that. That's not what I'm saying. But people are going to have a drink at the bar. People are going to be so addictive with their cell phone around you that you cannot look away. It is so compelling. People are going to have addictive relationships to food. That's one of the big unspoken addictions if you just walk anywhere around the Midwest. And I'm not even talking about obesity because I think that's fat shaming. You can just tell many people are out of relationship with what their body needs. Fat, skinny, tall, short, whatever it is. So they're everywhere. We are everywhere. We all have stuff. If we curate our lives free of addicts, we basically lose everyone. Now, this can go really dangerously into the opposite space, where we hold on to relationships too long, where people are actually making destructive choices that actually harm us, cross our boundaries, are actively really, really harmful, that we need to shift away from or create a different boundary around, which is what I'm about to talk about. But what I need to drive home is that it's just the essence of what is needed in order to maintain your sobriety is a true boundary that is both flexible and intelligent and adaptable. It is not rigid. I only hang out with these people at this time of day, da, 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 da. Because the more rigid you get, the more your life is just going to keep fucking with you. and probably the more miserable you get, and probably the more miserable you are to be around. And I will fully profess to having been that person in particular contexts at particular times of my life, to having defaulted to judgment because my boundaries weren't strong enough or even existent, to having defaulted to a wall or a shield because I didn't have an understanding and a practice of boundaries that allowed me to be in uncomfortable relationship with people who are different, with people for whom their sobriety looked different, their recovery looked different, their state of health looked different, their relationship with their purpose looked different. Those people are really important on your path. They may be, some of them, body workers or healers that you interact with potentially. Because we just don't live in an ideal world, right? So we don't get to like snap our fingers, suddenly be sober, and like everyone around me is perfect and sober, and I only go to this perfect sober massage therapist, and I only have this perfect sober partner, and only these perfect sober siblings. It's just not, it's not going to happen, guys. It's more of the unmet need probably driving that. It's more of the Judeo-Christian promise land seeking driving that, is what I think, at least based on my own experience. So we may need to have that friend who sometimes gets a little too drunk. You know what I mean? We may need, we may love that friend, and that friend actually may be really fucking fun. And they may be the friend that actually is the one you go to for that particular level of non-judgment. You know what I mean? There's just such a diversity of humanity. We're all on such a unique path. And if I could go back and change one thing about my life, I would drive this point home because I missed out on a lot of love, friendship, connection, solidarity because I was too concerned with how everyone sort of featured as an accessory to the sobriety that I thought I was curating for myself aesthetically. I really do regret that. That's a sincere, healthy regret that I have. That is why I'm speaking to it now. So, what's the remedy? I've said enough about this. Boundaries. Boundaries are the remedy. Boundaries, briefly, are not just language, they're not just a concept or an idea. Boundaries are an energy, they're a facet of our energy body that supports our boundary language, helps us to interact with people, to come into that messy conflict potential zone of like, ooh, that's uncomfortable because you had a couple glasses of wine and I didn't. But I'm still here with you. Okay, cool. You know what I mean? Without manipulating, without being manipulated, without flattery, without avoidance, being in the boundary, being in the center, without going home like I used to do when I would smoke weed all night and not drink, but be out at the bar till 4 a.m. And I would go home feeling like I had still drank because I didn't have boundaries and I was taking all of that energy on. Sometimes I would not smoke weed and I wouldn't even be around people who had drank and I would just be on the freaking bus and I would go home taking that energy on. You know, many of us that are sensitive have had that experience for sure. So, boundaries are key and they're a practice like the grounding that we've been cultivating through these little exercises that are key to maintain through practice. Your boundaries should be resourced from the energy of the earth, the larger system around us, the ecosystem, in a way that's not like, oh, I'm just oozing everywhere and I'm, you know, this tree gives me boundaries and that human gives me boundaries. No, boundaries should be resourced by the deep, true yin quality of the earth that we were starting to access through that bedrock visualization and through our connection to the divine. So without going off on that crazy, you know, limb too hard, the divine is just that energy that is oneness, that is behind all the gods, behind all the traditions, all the creators, all the ideas that we have about the divine. That's that energy of true expression and expansion and just like ejaculation and into the world of just like creativity and potential and heat and light and movement and sound. The energy behind the sun. That's part of how I see the divine and experience the divine. True yang, it's how we talk about it if we want to borrow Taoist terminology. So the divinity has a really protective function energetically. You see this in a lot of traditions, which is why we'll work with it to create the boundary with the earth that can both connect us to the things that we need connection to, whether we think that that makes sense for our sobriety or recovery or not, but that our actual organism, as resourced by this larger energetic ecosystem of the cosmos and the earth, actually says, yeah, this is what I need, even if it doesn't make sense to my mind necessarily, even if it doesn't make sense to my sponsor or whoever, or the Bible or whatever it is. And that can actually protect us from what we genuinely don't need. Because I got to be honest, guys, I've had some really bad interactions with some very sober people. And I have, wow, been such an asshole completely sober. I have been violent completely sober. Not proud of it, obviously, but it's just one of those things. So it's really important that we have those boundaries so that we can navigate through the world, through reality, just like our cells need boundaries to navigate through within our body, you know? So that'll be our last little exercise, and then we'll just talk about a wrap up, and hopefully we'll go forward with a different understanding of sobriety. So this is our meditation for cultivating boundaries and true protection so that we can engage with difference and hold our center within any environment. So take a moment to invite forward again your experience of your energy, your mind, your heart, your belly. And check in first with your grounding. We've touched on it twice today, so you might want to get up, move around, wiggle your butt, pat yourself down, really physicalize your grounding for a bit. And then really plug in like dropping anchor. Trust that you've primed the pump, so to speak, so that as you allow your flower or your tree, your plant energy, or whatever other imagery has come forward to drop from the life force in your belly all the way down into the belly of the earth, that you drop straight to the center of the earth without hesitation. Hold that intention, see what happens. Try not to get too caught up if it doesn't work the way you want it to. Just notice it as something that we practice that takes time, like a muscle to build and develop, just like our sobriety takes time to cultivate and discover. And as you let your anchor drop, or the potential or promise of your anchor to drop, just really receive that truest, deepest, most essential earth energy quality. That darkness, stillness, silence. That true solitude that is born of true connection. That creative potential of being in relationship, in physical form. And allow that energy to ride up like you just plugged in a light, the energy of your cord, your root system, and let that flow into your body and flow into your bones and your muscles and your tissues and your head and your heart and your belly. And then start to swirl that into the substrate for your boundaries. Allow it to swirl into an egg shape that surrounds you on all sides, 3D, top and bottom, every diagonal, 360 degrees of boundary. Let this boundary, as it flows up from the earth, be flexible and responsive, squishy and intelligent in its own right. Really like your skin. You don't have to tell your skin what to let in, what to let out. Your skin knows. Let your boundary know. Let it be biology. You might see it as silvery or dark or earthy or radiant, whatever really rings to you as boundary resourced by the earth. And take a moment to just really solidify this as your right to be here, to take up space. You being in your body, in this environment, unapologetic, here and now, incarnate. And then trust that you're actively, just by visualizing it and choosing it, you're programming the intention of your boundary, programming the grounding into your boundary. If you felt like you didn't even have one before, which is totally possible, you are actually creating your boundary now. And then start to open up as if the whole of your organism were a flower. Open to the sky, open to the sun, the moon, the stars, open to the heavenly bodies, the cosmic mysteries, the great mystery of the oneness, all the way up. Open to everything that is behind all the gods that have ever existed, all the spirits. Open to that spark of life of the cosmos, which has its lover and its great counterpart in the earth, in the center of each incarnate planet, and in the darkness of space as well. But open to that spark of light. Imagine it shooting down on you like a beam, like a great spotlight. And imagine that contrary to some experiences of being in the spotlight, you really feel proud to be here, to be seen, to be included, to be experienced in this way. Open to the warmth and the radiance and the love, the heat, the light, the sound, the movement, the animation, the crystal clarity of perspective that is total interconnection with all things. The excellence of knowing that you are this divine and this connected, so you can take action with this level of excellence and integrity. Open to any quality that you can receive from this truly cosmic, truly divine essence. Maybe it's just light for you. But trust that this energy really holds a lot about protection. And start to receive that protection into your boundary. Light it up. And your whole energy system as well. Your whole body, your whole head, heart, belly system, your meridians, your pathways, your veins, your lungs, your organs, etc. But really radiate that out then into your boundaries. Like you are on fire, like those portraits of saints who are glowing with that radiance, or their hearts are aflame with divine love. Really light your boundary on fire with divine love. Move your body in any way that helps that. Breathe in any way that supports that. Notice the potential for that, even if it doesn't fully snap into place in this one moment, if this is your first or even your 100th time exercising this. Know that it is a potential you have access to. Let the divine light heal any parts of your boundaries that are a little thin, or maybe burn off any parts that are a little no longer boundaries, but kind of clunky, rigid, stuck. Let it molt, kind of create this quality of molten metal, almost like fabric. You're weaving with the energy of the earth and the heavens. Really let this quality that you're bringing down from the above be about blessing and protection. The blessing to take the step that's right for you, even if you don't know why you would ever take that step. I mean, if it makes no sense. The protection from what you don't even know threatens you, from what you can't even imagine could harm you, and really don't even need to imagine. And let it bring intelligence, intelligence beyond your mental faculty, intelligence that is cosmic, that can say yes and no in ways that your mind can't fully fathom yet, and may never. And then to complete this circuit, feel free to pause this at any time and focus on a particular aspect of this meditation. To complete the circuit, let that golden or rainbow or whatever radiance it is for you, flow down into the earth, like delivering acupuncture to the earth, just giving that nice golden radiance the opportunity to pierce in and caress the earth, and to be caressed by the earth as if these were lovers that do love and miss and always want to be meeting each other. Really feel how those two qualities balance and inform your boundaries. And when you feel ready, you can shift back into your body, coming from belly into heart, from heart into head. And we'll shift out into classroom space for the last time. So going forward, you can play with any of these exercises that we've worked with as part of your recovery, as part of your day-to-day, as part of just your experimentation. Um, it's really important to honor the fact that you don't have to have a full-blown lifetime movie-looking addiction in order to have a really destructive relationship with some or several behaviors. You can be a very normal, functional, successful contemporary person and be really unhealthy. And that sucks. And I'm sorry that our culture is like this. And I wish for all of us, wherever we constellate on this spectrum, whatever language we want to use for it, that we find this essence that I've been alluding to, which is one, the relationship to my reason for being here. Two, the relationship to what kind of tools and practices I need that can actually sustain me in tending that spark and actually building it into manifestation, giving those gifts to the earth through my life, doing those things that make me feel really good. And three, having a good time, having the joy that comes from both accountability to doing all of that, but my ability to be with difference, to be with discomfort, to be with people who are different than me, to go places that are crazy, to go places that are stupid and have a good time. Even if I know it's problematic, even if I know the world is on fire and we're burning carbon, you know what I mean? To really be able to animate myself with joy and to allow my work, my reason, going back to step one, to be animated by that joy and by my capacity to be surprised by my life. If I was closed off to everyone that didn't look, think, act like me, I would be deeply impoverished. And I've lived that way, and it sucked. And I'm sorry for it. So this is part of why I'm attempting to move forward now in a more balanced way. So all this stuff you can take with you. These practices come from a body of teachings called Energy Body Mastery, which sit within the cycle teachings. That is contemporary shamanic and metaphysical tradition about basically waking people up to this quality that is present in a lot of indigenous cultures and is really not present in ours, which is that, life has a purpose. We're all here for a reason. And there are things that we can do to actually tend that or go stray away from that. And we can really work with our relational capacity for relationship with the land, with the earth, with spirits, with each other, in a way that, again, tends that flourishing of our reason and then our collective reason, our collective flourishing, or doesn't. And so that's what these teachings are all about. They're held by a healing center called the Last Mass Center. There's an online curriculum, and those resources are on my website. And you can also contact me if you're looking for a particular piece of these teachings that you haven't found. What I offer going forward in terms of one-on-one client work, group classes, I teach the Energy Body Mastery every once in a while. It's an 8-week course. There's a version that Last Mass Center teaches online. I also teach a little package of this kind of energy work, or several packages, however long it takes you to get it, for one-on-one or for small groups. And we can particularly gear that around recovery in complement to your recovery process. The caveat I will make is that if you're in an active state of unsafety, if you are like actively fearing for your life, I really encourage you to reach out to medical, psychiatric, whatever professional help, because I'm not a therapist or a psychiatrist, and I'm not an addiction counselor. So I really encourage you to reach out to whatever resources you need. And I'll put those resources in the video, and those resources are also on my website on the services page. Or reach out to someone that you trust, someone that is close to you, someone in your neighborhood that can help you. Um, but once you've done that work and you're able to like set up appointments, make appointments, show up for the discomfort, once you've gotten out of the pain of, being in an active state of, certain forms of addiction or mental health crisis or whatever it is, once you've gotten out of that to where you can actually temper yourself with a little like healthy discomfort, hit me up and we can totally work together, and I would love to. Um, and I really wish for all of you, wherever you are within your relationship to your recovery and your health, that you find what you need, because I know it's out there, and I know it's just sometimes a question of taking the risks, doing something a little different, of letting that spark that drives us fucking nuts, that animates us and keeps us alive and also fucking pisses us off because why are we even here? Oh, for that. And how do I even do this? Fuck, I hope that can serve as a resource for you to drive you forward in a healthy way in your process, because we need your gifts. Particular aspects of the teachings to pop out. The energy body mastery are the energetic hygiene tools. The clearing is an extension of that, which is really the key piece for me, one of the key pieces in terms of meeting the tracing certain things back to their roots. Sometimes the roots are in our ancestry, and there are ancestral healing forms that practitioners can perform on your behalf. Sometimes the roots are in a wound that we can't actually reach, that requires someone with a certain form of or level of initiation to reach for us, whether that's body work or shamanic healing, soul retrieval, ancestral healing, etc. All of that stuff is a possibility. I've talked in other videos about that, but if you want to learn more about that, you can reach out to me. We can do one-on-one sessions specifically focused on finding what's at the root of your stuff, whatever it is. And no stuff is too large or too small necessarily, as long as you're safe enough in reaching out, and taking that risk, then I'm happy to try and work with you or refer you to one of my colleagues if that seems more appropriate. So, yeah, I really hope that this is beneficial. I hope to continue seeing you folks, whoever you may be, on these calls. Maybe we'll do some live ones coming up too. So, yeah, reach out with anything. Thank you so much for being here on this planet and in this call. Thank you so much for joining us. And please donate if you can. $20 is my asking for this class. I'll put that information on the caption. Whatever you can give is super appreciated, but 20 is sort of the minimum that really helps me kind of get the juice of what I need from this offering. But whatever it is, again, that's meant to be your personal sacrifice towards this work. And I hope that offering comes back to you in some way. Thank you so much. So I'll just invite us into a quick calling out of our energies. Thank you so much, spirits below and above, spirits of each direction that resourced us, helping spirits and ancestral helping spirits, the spirits of the land and the great spirits of the land where each of us reside and are, to the spirits of the earth below and the sky above and the cosmos, the oneness, and to all the other beings and energies that resourced us, the earth, the air, the fire, and the water, and the elements. Go if you must, stay if you can. I release you with all of my love and all of my gratitude. Thank you so much. I dissolve this energy and release this circle. And I invite you to take back with you whatever energy is yours to retrieve back into your space. And if there's something that you find that you don't really want to take back with you, you can drop that into the earth and blow that up into a million pieces of light so that you can recycle it and it can be made new. Thank you all so, so much. As we open the circle, we signal to our bodies that we step out. We shift gears back into normative consciousness. and step out into the rest of our days. Thank you all. Appreciate you.